Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into something today, something we all experience, right? Humor. You've sent in some really interesting excerpts about Freud, about Freud's theories of jokes. And we're going to unpack them
Yeah.
and see why there's so much more than just fun, just a little amusement. Get ready, because we're going to explore how humor can give us a glimpse into the unconscious mind.
Yeah. What's really fascinating about Freud is that he saw humor as like this incredible tool for understanding people, understanding the human psyche,
Yeah.
you know? He thought it wasn't just about amusement, but a way for us to sort of grapple with these complex and often, hidden thoughts and emotions we all have.
Okay, so it's not just about getting a chuckle. So
Right.
there's like a deeper psychological thing happening.
Exactly. He called this the concept of psychic economy.
Okay.
So imagine, you're stressed out about a deadline at work,
Yeah.
and instead of just bottling up all that tension, you make a joke about work-life balance. That joke, if it's well timed, can actually help release that pent-up energy and refocus your mind.
So a good laugh is kind of like a pressure valve for our anxieties.
Yeah,
Like, I'm starting to see how humor could be more than just a simple distraction, right?
it's more than just a distraction. It's a powerful way to make really complex ideas more, I guess, palatable.
Palatable, yeah.
I mean, think about it. Some of the hardest things to talk about, right? Like death, sex, authority figures, those are often the subject of our funniest jokes.
Yeah, that's true. But isn't that a bit too simple? I mean, are all jokes just pressure valves for our anxieties? What about, jokes that actually make us think a little, the ones that have an edge?
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Not all humor is created equal. Freud actually, he distinguished between what he called innocent humor and tendentious humor. So innocent humor is pretty straightforward, right? Puns, wordplay, your classic dad joke. It's lighthearted, clever. But then there's tendentious humor. And this is where things get a bit more complex, I guess. This type of humor has like a hidden motive, often with an aggressive or even like a rebellious edge to it.
Okay, so like those roasts that comedians do.
Right.
It's hilarious, but there's definitely some aggression there.
Right.
A way to express those feelings through the humor.
Exactly. Think about jokes that, poke fun at powerful people or institutions. On the surface, they're funny, but, underneath, they could be expressing a subtle form of rebellion, a way to challenge authority without like directly confronting it.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm starting to see the layers here. So we've got these different types of humor, but how do they actually work? What's happening in our minds when we find something funny?
Well, Freud identified a few key mechanisms at play.
Okay.
One is what he called condensation, and it's almost like packing a suitcase for a trip, right?
Yeah.
Where you try and fit as much as you can into this limited space. Jokes do kind of the same thing. They condense multiple thoughts or desires into a single funny image or phrase.
Oh, so a good punchline is like a mental suitcase crammed with meaning.
You got it. Think about a classic joke. Why don't scientists trust atoms?
Hmm. I don't know.
Because they make up everything.
Ooh. Right, right.
See, I mean, it's funny. It's funny because it packs these complex ideas about trust, scientific skepticism, the nature of reality, all in just a few words.
Wow. That's making me think about all the jokes I tell in a whole new way.
Right.
That's great.
And then there's displacement. It's kind of like redirecting a package to a different address, I guess.
Right.
And this is when we sort of shift our emotions from their original target to something a little less threatening.
Hmm.
So instead of expressing, anger directly at your boss, you might make a joke about a clumsy coworker or something. It's a way to release the tension without the consequences.
But I mean, doesn't that make humor seem kind of manipulative? Like we're using jokes to mask our true feelings.
That's a great point. And that actually leads us to another key aspect of Freud's theory, humor as a defense mechanism.
Oh, okay.
He believed that humor can be this really powerful way to cope with difficult emotions and experiences. It's about finding a way to acknowledge the tough stuff without being completely overwhelmed by it. He called this emotional catharsis.
Okay, so laughing at our problems to make them less scary.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I can see how that might be helpful, but how does that actually work? I mean, is it just about distracting ourselves?
It's more than just distraction. It's about shifting our perspective, right?
Yeah.
When we laugh at something, we create a little bit of distance between ourselves and the problem.
Uh-huh.
It allows us to see things in a new light, to find like the absurdity in the pain, you know?
So humor can help us find a sense of control, even in like chaotic situations.
Exactly. It's a way of saying life might throw me curveballs, but I'm still going to swing at them,
Yeah.
you know, and maybe even laugh while I'm doing it. It's about reclaiming agency, even when, you know, when we're faced with hardship.
That's a really powerful way to think about humor.
Yeah.
But it also raises a really interesting question. If humor is so personal, how does it work in a social context?
Yeah.
You know, we don't just laugh alone, we laugh with others.
Right.
How does that fit into Freud's theories?
That's where we'll pick up in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
So stay tuned as we explore those social dynamics of humor and how Freud believed that that laughter can reveal hidden truths about society itself.
Ooh, I like that. Can't wait.
Welcome back. So, you know, when we left off, we were starting to sort of unravel that social side of humor, right?
Right, yeah.
And Freud, he didn't just see jokes as like personal therapy.
Uh-huh.
He believed they could actually reveal a lot about the world around us.
Okay, yeah. That's a fascinating idea. I mean, I think we all know that humor can like vary so wildly depending on who we're with, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like friends, family, coworkers. It's like we instinctively adjust our jokes to fit the situation.
Right. And Freud would argue that the subtle shifts in our humor, they're not accidental.
Okay.
You know, they actually reflect our unconscious awareness of social norms and hierarchies even. Remember like how we talked about those jokes about rivals or competitors?
Yeah, yeah.
The ones that might, you know, mask these deeper feelings of envy or even inadequacy.
Yeah, it was like those jokes were a way of like acknowledging those uncomfortable feelings without directly confronting them.
Exactly. And, you know, the excerpts you sent in actually give a great example of this.
Oh, okay.
Freud analyzed jokes about people, you know, boasting about their possessions or their achievements.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And on the surface, they might just seem like harmless bragging, right? But Freud suggested that, you know, they often actually stem from this need for validation, like a desire to impress others and sort of solidify our place in that social pecking order.
It's like that saying like money talks, but mine always says goodbye. It's funny, but there's a little hint of insecurity there, right? It's like we're trying to laugh off our financial anxieties by like pretending to be all nonchalant about it.
Exactly. It's a brilliant example of how humor can be used to navigate these really complex social dynamics. And remember displacement, that idea of redirecting emotions to a less threatening target.
Yeah, yeah.
Freud believed that many jokes, especially those with a sexual undertone, actually use this mechanism to express, you know, taboo desires in a more socially acceptable way.
So instead of directly stating those desires, the joke provides a kind of a roundabout way to address them. It's like using humor to test the boundaries of what's considered appropriate in the given context.
Precisely. You know, a well-placed double entendre can create this shared moment of like naughtiness, you know,
Yeah.
a way of acknowledging those desires without crossing any social lines.
But what about when those lines DO get crossed? You know, I'm thinking about those times when a joke lands really badly, maybe even offends someone. Could Freud's theories kind of explain that too?
Absolutely. You know, Freud would argue that those misfires, they happen when the unconscious motives behind the joke sort of clash with the social norms or the sensibilities of the audience. You know, what might be hilarious to one group could be deeply offensive to another.
Yeah, it makes me think of like those dark humor memes that, you know, you see circulating online after like tragedies or during really difficult times.
Right.
They can be so divisive.
Right.
You know, some people find them like cathartic, while others find them just deeply inappropriate.
Yeah, that's a great point. It really speaks to this complex interplay between personal coping mechanisms and social sensitivities. You know, Freud would likely argue that those dark humor memes they actually represent an attempt to grapple with collective trauma, like to find a shared sense of release in the face of these overwhelming events. But as you said, you know, it's a delicate balance, and the success of the humor often really depends on the shared experiences and sensibilities of that audience.
Yeah. And speaking of shared experiences, one thing that's been like sticking with me is this idea of humor as a defense mechanism, especially in the face of like really tough times.
Yeah.
The text actually mentioned Freud's like admiration for people who could use humor to cope with hardship,
Yeah.
to find a little bit of light in the darkness.
I find that aspect of Freud's theory incredibly moving. He saw humor not just as this way to escape from pain, but as a way to transform it, to find a glimmer of hope in the midst of suffering. It's about reclaiming a sense of agency, even when we're faced with circumstances beyond our control.
It's like saying life might knock me down, but I can choose to get back up with a smile on my face.
Right.
And that kind of resilience, that ability to find humor, even in the midst of hardship, can be so inspiring.
Absolutely. And that's why Freud was so interested in those anti-authoritarian jokes.
Right.
He saw them as a form of disguised rebellion,
Yeah.
a way for individuals to express their frustrations with the status quo without directly confronting those in power.
So it's like a safety valve for social pressure,
Exactly.
a way to kind of poke fun at the absurdity of the system without it risking serious consequences.
Exactly. Think about, political cartoons or stand-up comedians who tackle social issues, They're using humor to point out the flaws in our systems,
Wow.
To make us question things we might take for granted. It's a powerful form of social commentary. And Freud would argue that it stems from this deep-seated human need to challenge authority and fight for a better world.
Yeah, it's amazing how Freud could find such profound social and psychological insights in something as seemingly simple as a joke. But I mean, we also have to acknowledge that his theories aren't without their flaws, right? The text mentions that his focus on sexual and aggressive motives has been challenged over time.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, while Freud was a brilliant thinker, we have to recognize that his theories were influenced by the social norms and the scientific understanding of his era. So while his insights were groundbreaking, we have to acknowledge that they don't capture the full complexity of humor.
So maybe not all humor is driven by these deep, dark desires.
Right. Critics would argue that Freud might have overemphasized those aspects, overlooking the role of, pure intellectual playfulness, the joy of wordplay, or the simple pleasure of surprise.
And I imagine humor is also incredibly subjective, right? I mean, what one person finds hilarious, another might find offensive or just plain confusing.
Absolutely. Context matters so much. A joke that works in one setting might completely fall flat in another.
Yeah.
And personal experiences, cultural backgrounds, even our mood at any given moment can influence how we perceive humor.
So while Freud's theories provide a fascinating lens through which to view humor, it's important to remember that it's just one perspective among many, right?
Exactly. And that's what makes the study of humor so fascinating. It's a constantly evolving field with new theories and perspectives emerging all the time. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's circle back to what we've learned about Freud.
Okay, so we've explored Freud's ideas about the different types of jokes and the mechanisms behind them, and also how humor can be like this coping mechanism, this personal thing, but also this powerful social tool.
Yeah.
And it's just wild how he connects humor to, like, our deepest desires, anxieties.
Yeah.
And it really suggests that laughter is about way more than just what we see on the surface.
Yeah, it's really remarkable, how Freud was able to find so much depth in something as simple as a joke.
Right. And it makes you wonder, what do our favorite jokes say about us, about the society we're living in? I mean, that's something to think about as we wrap up our deep dive into humor.
Right, because if humor eyes a window to the unconscious, like Freud believed, then our laughter might be telling us something really profound, about our deepest desires, fears, and anxieties.
So that joke you tell at parties, the one that always gets a laugh, it might be saying more about you than you realize.
Exactly. Think about the themes that pop up in your favorite jokes. Are they about authority, relationships, social awkwardness? Those recurring patterns might hold some clues to your unconscious preoccupations.
Starting to think about my why go-to jokes now.
Uh,
I do have a tendency to go for wordplay and puns. I wonder what Freud would say about that.
He might suggest that you enjoy the intellectual playfulness of language, that you find satisfaction in finding hidden meanings and unexpected connections between words. Or he might just say, you appreciate a good dad joke.
Yeah, well, I can't argue with that. But it's not just about the content of the jokes, though, right? It's also about the style of humor that we kind of lean towards.
Mm-hmm.
Do we love puns, slapstick, dry wit? I mean, those preferences might speak volumes about our personality too.
Absolutely. Some people are drawn to more aggressive humor using, sarcasm or put downs to get a laugh. Others prefer, more gentle observational humor. Finding the amusement in like the everyday absurdities of life, those choices can tell us a lot about how we interact with the world and the people around us.
Yeah. And let's not forget about the social context of humor either. The jokes we share with our friends are probably different from the ones we tell at work or in a family setting.
That's such an important point. Our sense of humor is constantly adapting to the situation that we're in, the people we're with, and the unspoken rules of that particular social environment.
It's almost like our sense of humor is this secret code,
Yeah.
a way of signaling our understanding of social dynamics
Hmm.
and our willingness to like play by the rules or maybe even bend them a little.
Exactly. And that's why Freud believed that humor can be such a powerful tool for building connections and navigating social hierarchies. You know, a well-timed joke can break the ice, diffuse tension, or even challenge the status quo.
So the next time you find yourself laughing, just take a second, take a moment to pause and ask yourself, what is it about this joke that's resonating with me? What's my laughter? What's it revealing about my inner world?
Yeah. It might lead to some fascinating self-discoveries, and who knows, it might even spark a deeper understanding of the people you share those laughs with.
Well said.
Yeah,
I think Freud would be proud of us for taking his theories and turning them into a tool for self-reflection and connection.
I think so too. And as we wrap up our deep dive here, we encourage you, our listener, to keep exploring this fascinating world of humor and its connection to the human psyche. Keep laughing, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
Until next time, fellow explorers.